Okay. Uh, in the last class, we have discussed about rights, right? So, what is important to understand about the rights, liberty, equality is the characteristics of rights and fundamental rights, which are also enshrined in Indian Constitution, which is important to understand, and also the characteristics and features of human rights. At least you should understand why it is for and why we are talking of rights, and how rights are different from other value components like liberty and equality. These are also other value components which are uh, being highlighted in our constitution, because when we say that we people solemnly constitute ourselves as a sovereign secular socialist democratic republic, then justice, liberty, equality, we also mention about justice, liberty, equality, and each component has certain values, and we need to discuss about what kind of values that justice inherits, the kind of values that liberty and equality talk of. So when we say that um, rights rights doesn't equate equality and liberty. So you might have right, but you might not get the equality in that society, you might not get the liberty ensured in that society. So why I'm saying so is that rights are inherent in the nature, in that way you can claim rights. So in the last class also we have discussed the characteristics of the rights. While discussing the characteristics of the rights, we have said that these are inherent in nature, so these are some entitlement and endowment you can claim. And role of the state is that state will artificially create those rights. So it will make those rights legally enforceable, because state will artificially create the rights which are inherent in the, nature. And accordingly there are also certain rights. We talk about the tribal rights. Basically these are uh, customary laws or customary rights, we can say, which are related to, you see, customs and have been continuing throughout the history. So there is also a continuation of those rights, and historical framework of rights will basically define the customary rights. We also have a moral rights. Moral rights are equivalent to customs. Social welfare rights are also there. So these are also enforceable by the court, but the basic principle and the basic nature of social welfare framework of right is to bring in the welfare and to distribute the goods, common goods, equally among the people, to basically to elevate the level of the poor and make them at par with the you see the rich, as well as those who are at higher ups. Okay, so that's how we can understand the idea of rights. And we have discussed about fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are a bit different from human rights in a sense, just because we can say, although it is inherent in nature, we have artificially created it. State has created it, because there is a constitution. We have a written constitution. Constitution is the law of the land, and the constitution has enumerated those rights, enforce those rights, and also make those rights enforceable, suspended whenever there is an emergency, whenever needed. So according to the convenience of their execution of the system and laws and rules and regulation and social order, these rights can also be, you see, suspended at times, but you can also go to court to enforce the rights. During emergency, certain rights like, you see, Article 17, Article 23, 24, 25 uh, are, and also Article 29 to 30 are not to be, not to be guaranteed. So you can also go to court to enforce the right. There are certain remedial rights which are important to understand. So in this whole discussion, what is important is to understand the basic features of the rights, understand the basic features of fundamental rights, because fundamental rights, when you see the history, it doesn't come all of a sudden. So there is also a history. We can talk about the Shoras Bill, and then also Sapru Commission's report. So there is a history. So I will not go that detail about the history of fundamental rights now. What is important to understand about the rights, that's what I will mention and discuss. And then we see certain freedom. In the last class also we have discussed about six freedoms that we have, and reasonable restrictions which are being imposed under freedoms. Then we have discussed on right to equality, and when we discuss about right to equality, we also bring in the concept of the caste. Okay, so this caste component is important. It is also give you understand how it is equated to justice. Suppose you see that in Indian constitution we have values, like we have like justice, liberty, equality. We are taking everything together. So how to understand that component called liberty, how to understand that component called justice, how to understand that component called equality? Can it be independent of each other, or can it be related to each other, which is important to understand. So when you talk about right to equality, I have already told you it is about equality before law and equal protection of law. Right, equality before law, that everybody will be treated equally. So this is equal treatment. Equal treatment will be given to all. Now you see, equal treatment will be given to all irrespective of the wealth they earn, income they earn. Okay, that's what it is being mentioned. But when you talk about the equality before the law, everybody will be looked at equal. So kind of punishment, kind of reward will also be equally distributed. There should not be any kind of the discrimination, and there should not be any kind of special privileges attached to the persons that birth, person's residence, person caste, creed, gender, age, etc., which is being mentioned. So it will be treated equally in that way. And when we say treated equally, how to be treated equally? So how we can treat someone equally when individual by nature are not equal? So this is a question which has been raised every time, and to answer that questions, we have brought in the concept of caste, and we have also discussed about the importance of reservation. In the last class, we have discussed briefly about Mandal Commission, and you should understand the Mandal Commission because it has actually created a hue and cry in this whole paraphernalia of implementation of the fundamental rights in reality. You see, when you talk about fundamental rights, these are some of the principles which are written, but not necessarily that a state is supposed to execute that principles. So many a times state will take care of various measures. They will take into account various measures to you see, make any principles a reality. So accordingly, we can even think of different schemes, different legislations, and some actions. When you talk of reservation, reservation is also another action of the government in order to make the formal equality, which is mentioned in the constitution, a reality. So we talk about formal equality, it is there as a principle, it is there, and in order to realize that equality, we seek the kind of measures, kind of policies which are being formulated by the government and even executed by the government, and how far it is executed, what are the loopholes, it is to be discussed, and then that's how you could actually make formal equality a real equality. You can translate it, or even a formal freedom, a real freedom. When we talk about the real freedom, whether in reality you are availing that freedom, whether in reality you are availing the minority rights. We have been talking about the cultural and educational rights, which have been mentioned in Article 29 and 30, right? So after right to equality, we have right to freedom. Then we also have freedom of place, freedom of expression, right to life, right to religion, then come in. Then after right to religion, we also have right against the exploitation. which is very important. And after that, we have cultural and educational rights for the minorities that come in. And then we also have the remedial provisions that you can also reach to court if your rights are being suspended and rights are being taken away, so that remedial action can be taken, so which are mentioned in Article 32. So accordingly, you can see the division of the rights, and in its sections of right, we also have certain laws, certain legislations, which will help you to understand this formal enumeration of the rights as the reality. So reservation is a way to make the formal equality a reality. So there are different types of reservation. Now you see that you cannot simply say that Mandal Commission's reservation is a step, but it is a it's a preferential statement. Treatment. You can also say it's a reverse discrimination. That kind of reservation he is talking of. So we have different varieties of reservation, right? We have you see that economic cutoff. Only on the basis of economic cutoff, on the only on the basis of economic status of one particular community, irrespective of considering the geography, location of that particular community, having the financial status of majority of the members of the community, you can also give a community a reservation status, a kind of reservation status. That is an economic cutoff. Okay, so we also have individual economic cutoff. So here we actually leave apart the community. You focus on the individual member of the community, individual member who is not financially well off, who actually needs uh, your help, in a sense that affirmative actions, the provisions which are there in the constitution to equalize the society, to make a egalitarian society. So in that way, we also have provisions to avail the scholarship, even to also give some preferential treatment to that candidate. So in that way, individual economic cutoff is also there. That is, apart from that economic cutoff, which is ensured for the community and the caste. One is economic cutoff, economic cutoff, general economic cutoff. It is not related to one specific caste and class and one specific community. General economic cutoff, any member, irrespective of caste, class, birth, and race, and can fall into that economic criteria. So it's not like that a Brahmin cannot fall into that criteria. It's on the basis of the economic status, that minimum earning, that monthly earning or per capita income per month. So and that asset of the household. On that basis, you can you can determine the reservation. So that is the economic cutoff reservation. Individual economic cutoff is different. So we will only look at the candidate. We will not look into the whole community. When you talk about the economic cutoff, that may be communitarian, that may not be community based, that may be community based. Okay. And then we have preferential treatment. When you say preferential treatment when there are two candidates opting for a post, one is reserved, another one is unreserved. If both of them got the equal score, then reserve will be preferred over the unreserved one. That is the kind of, these are the kinds of reservation which are available in the constitution to make formal reality, to make the principle you see a real one. Okay, so you need to understand it, because here also we can read some media takes, and it is important to understand the representation of caste in media, and even in media house, in media industries. Okay, Ambedkar, you know about the Muknayak, right? Muknayak was edited and published by Ambedkar in 1920s. It was a voice of Dalit people and the Dalit caste, you know. So Ambedkar advocated Dalit journalism. He advocated the importance of journalism which will advocate the Dalit issues, because that time, that period of time, he actually seen that this is the community, these are the people within the community about whom nobody care, nobody discuss things, nobody look after them, and how they are sidelined, how they are treated, how like they are treated as they have contaminated the society. They are like a blot of the society. So he realized that, and he also came up with that muknai, that is also free mind, that is a free mind, free voice. That was the idea. And then we see over the years, whatever he has predicted, that becomes a reality. Even Ambedkar also called for mass conversion of Hindu people to Buddhism. So there are many Dalits you also see that they have converted from Hinduism to Buddhism. Okay, so there was a reason behind it, just because it was also, you can look it from the very subaltern perspective, for subaltern justice perspective, because when you discuss about the caste, liberty, equality, justice, these three values are culminating in. Okay, so it is not about one single aspect you call, you see, the equality. It is also about the justice. So let me tell you briefly about justice. What is justice? It is important to understand. So justice, in a very simpler way, simplest form, I can understand justice as the pronouncement of law, right? By lawyer. That's what is the justice, by not a lawyer, but by judge. By judge, when they pronounce any kind of law, it becomes a kind of or law or rule or verdict. It becomes the justice. That's what we understand. But it has a very broader definition. From religious point of view, justice is inherent in the moral codes which are to be followed by people of the community. That's what we understand, the moral definition of the justice. Okay, then we also see for poor people, justice is there in elimination of poverty. So for them, when you ask them what is justice for you, they will say, you eliminate the poverty, justice will be delivered to us. Huh. So a person who is, you see, who is being discriminated over the years, so you try to remove the discrimination, so justice will be provided to them. Suppose you see that one community which is underdeveloped, culturally underdeveloped. Why culturally underdeveloped? Because of some of the sanctions, maybe because of the imposition of other culture on that community. So what will be the justice for that community in that case? So justice for the community is to remove the impositions of those sanctions, cultural sanctions on that community, right? So that's how you can think about delivering justice to a community. So it is the way how we look at justice from the very subaltern perspective. When you talk about the caste, we can also look at caste from the subaltern perspective. Okay, so it is all about how to deliver the goods, how to deliver the common goods equally and impartially, and have equal share among equals, and also discriminatory share among unequals. So in order to make society equal, we cannot equalize everything, but to an extent we can try to equalize. In that case, we need to take some discriminatory actions against one community for others. That's what is there in the constitution, and many a time we do not know what is there in the constitution. So without knowing, without understanding, we try to report. Hence, it is also very dangerous. Without knowing what is there in the constitution, you actually go and comment on any political actions, on any kind of, you see, activities, political activities. Most of the activities nowadays are political. They're politically motivated. So why it is happening, you need to know. And we say, like yesterday, we also see that we need to know, so what is algorithm based, what is not, and how we are ruled by algorithm, and how to avoid the algorithm. So you can, all of a sudden you cannot avoid algorithm, but there are also tactics to avoid algorithms, right? And how can you do it? Even by educating yourself, right? So it's important even to understand the importance of, like, caste representation even in media, and what is happening across the class, and why we are talking about the caste, and why people, if people from dominant caste or Brahmin caste, when we talk about the caste, they will always, like, take things in a different way or negative way. So whenever there is a discussion of caste, they cannot take it easily, and especially in this belt. We see in Assam, we do not have that kind of caste discrimination, caste-based discrimination. But it's not like that. There were not any kind of caste-based discrimination. So caste happened to be one way to even sideline one community and also denigrate one community, or at times to create an olfactory or gustatory discrimination. It's there. So but to a lesser extent we can experience, we can witness it, or many a time people don't even witness it, just because we have come out here in the northeastern belt, we have come out of that this caste in based, you see, inequities, or even see the stigma. So we have, to certain extent we have come out because of the writings also, because of, you see, that Mamanirasham Goswami happened to be one. He is also again the Brahmin. So that is an irony, is that you see most of the you see the writers even, and laureate, and you also see the advocates for caste are Brahmin, from the Brahmin. So you want a Brahmin to even defend defend the caste, even the reservation, and talk about the reservation, and also speaking like, for a Harijan or a Dalit, and there is no Dalit who will be speaking for the Dalit. So it's important to find out a Dalit or a Harijan speaking for the Dalit. Now, Dalit word is different. Dalit is something, Dalit Harijans are categorized as a fifth caste even. Untouchables. When you talk about the Harijan, they're untouchable. They're fifth caste. They're not in the four Varna sections. We have that four Varna system. Four Varnas are there, Dija and Bamin, Varnas. They are not in that four Varnas. They are outcast. Okay, they're outcast, completely outcast. So we are trying to merge that to, that caste Sudras and that Harijans, and we also try to bring in that spectrum, bring them in that spectrum called Dalit. Okay, but you see that when you talk about the Dalit, or you say the SC, there are less number of people belonging to community who will be speaking for them, just because they themselves are not developed. So why will they speak for? So they will not speak for. So you need to find someone from even the upper caste who will speak for you. But how genuine they are while they are speaking for you. Even you see this P. Sainath. P. Sainath himself is a Brahmin. He has got many accolades, right? He also extensively reported in villages about developmental scenarios, about even the caste hierarchies and all. Okay, but you see that in his report, if you read, you don't find the execution of means you actually find the dominance of caste hierarchy in the rural India, but you somehow you could not find the caste hierarchy which is there in urban places. So that is a kind of, you see lack of representation of the caste, because he talks about caste which is ingrained and which is also quite, prevalent in rural India, but it is not a phenomenon which is prevalent in urban India. But in urban India, we get to see Brahmanical hierarchy more rather than in rural India, because the caste component is also related to holding of asset. Right. Apart from it, you need to understand the caste. So when we talk about the four Varna system and Savarna system, it is also related to holding of asset. We are talking about right to equality. So they are not treated equally. So they are not treated equally. There are also some framework to understand the caste. We say that they have been considered as impure. A Dalit person, a tribal person, are considered impure. Okay, and there is also a definition of purity, impurity, pollution, and purity, kind of, that demarcation by which we get to understand the caste existing, like in a caste hierarchy. So people who are at a lowly status are not pure, just because they are engaged in like cleanliness activities, and you get to find some smell from odor from their body, and just because they engage themselves into lowly occupations, and they are impure. So this is a kind of social inequality. So the kind of inequality we are talking related to caste is a social inequality apart from economic inequality. When you talk about the Dalit wars, and when Dalit came into action, we talk about this movement, Dalit movement, we talk about this backward class movement after Mandal, and prior to and after even Mandal Commission's institutionalization of caste. We see a backward class movement as well as Dalit movement. They they went for demanding, they they actually went for demanding not only the material you see incentive, but they want to get themselves rid of the social humiliation, because the equality they demanded is not only economic equality. Here we are talking about social equality, it is about the status. Okay, so when we bring in the reservation, many many from the opposite, even the critic may also, who are against the reservations, they have another line of arguments to even say that it doesn't demarcate between the caste and a class. Yesterday, in the last class, I have told you that OBC reservation doesn't demarcate the caste and a class, and they have mixed it. Other backward class, and there are also backward caste which are also engulfed into the class phenomenon. Okay, so it is important to understand. First is the Homo hierarchias, that is Louis Dumont framework to understand the caste. Okay, so it's important. Caste is something which is associated with the occupation. So we also know Savarna caste, and that's why they are always treated with a lower caste is always treated with a pollutant of the society, or there is also a demarcation of purity and impurity. Right, that was the like first understanding of the caste here in India, and then we also have some of the effort to get rid of this caste phenomenon. So MN Srinivas, we talk about Srinivas' effort to Sanskritization of the caste. We talk about westernization, and even when you talk about the globalization, liberalization, so we have see the dismantling of that caste hierarchies. We no longer see the caste hierarchies. That's what people claim, but it's not like that. They say that when there is globalization, market economy, they have penetrated, and they have created markets around. So people who got educated, irrespective of their the caste status, they got recruited. So we now talk about the caste-free occupations. So initially we have caste-based occupations. So there is hereditarily, so people will engage themselves with the occupation of their father, mother, like that way. So in that way it was a caste-based occupation. But we don't talk about the caste, and caste is irrelevant because of the globalization, because of the liberalization, because of the market forces which are into that economy, which has tried and even attempted to equalize the caste. It has equalized the caste phenomenon because it has provided opportunities to the one who is skilled. Now we say who can be skilled, who are skilled. Whether people who are at a lowly level got the equal opportunity to be skilled or not. So we have some special component provisions are there. So those special component provisions, we also have some special component planned to make them economically, make the lowly class, so-called lowly caste, economically uplift themselves, and also to find themselves at a higher economic ladder. So certain provisions are there, but these are not implemented regularly. For tribals, even you see the tribal advisory councils are there. So three-fourth of you see. So I'm mixing it because this is also a question of intersectionality. It is important. It is intersectionality because tribal, caste, class, and gender, as well as sexuality, are interconnected somehow. Nowadays, when you talk about different framework to understand the social problem, then you need to, this is also politicized, and you need to understand from intersectional angle how caste is related to class, and also related to gender, and also related to even the sexuality, that is also said, because these are also some of the issues which are often misrepresented in the media, or even not represented in the media, you see. And when we talk about, so we were in, okay, we talk about the representation. Okay, so representation, in terms of representation, how caste is represented in the media. And there is a survey by Oxfam and News Laundry survey. It was carried out even in 2009 or 2012. That survey was carried out. Caste census was done in 1931. After that, there is no caste census which have been done, and that's why there is an opposition against this kind of delimitation bill, which that BJP wanted to get it passed, just because caste census was not done. It was done in 1931. Okay, so thereafter it was not done. Now BJP announced that there will be caste census in 2027, but it was not done. On the basis of 2011 census, they are supposed to carry out the delimitations. But there are changes in the caste, changes in the caste structures, changes in the classes in the society. Okay, because over the years, even see in a 10 years, you can get to see change in the aspect of materiality of one particular class and a caste, in the in terms of even the social status and all. Provided the community, the whole community, and even the state accepted it. It is also a matter of acceptance, you know. So you see that how media, you see the media highlighted the caste problem. So there is a survey, News Laundry, that was carried out by Oxfam and News Laundry. They carried out a survey. They said that that survey was carried out across 12 magazines, how they deal with the caste issues. So out of 972 articles, they found that only 10 articles, out of 972 articles, only 10 articles are related to caste. Okay, so you can actually see that it is not represented well. The caste issues are not represented well. It doesn't mean that we do not have caste-based atrocities, violence. So every day, every single day, you get to find caste-based atrocities, and especially in the northern, like in hinterland. So we get to find there is an intersectionality of caste and the tribe more in that area. So when we talk about even the tribe across, how they are distributed across India, so we actually see in Himalayan belt, we also have tribes in Himalayan belt. Himalayan belt, Northeast India come under the Himalayan belt, right? As well as that we also many times we also say that Uttar Pradesh is extend to Uttar Pradesh, and in the central India. Central India, we talk about the Rajasthan, even the Madhya Pradesh, even Uttarakhand. These are the central, hinterland, and then western in western, not not in western actually. We have the southern part. In southern part, we also have that South India, like that whole, that Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, that Andhra Pradesh, etc., etc. So when you try to find out the caste conduits in this belt, then you will find that the condition of caste, a Dalit, are more vulnerable in the central India, and even in southern India. In southern India and central India, condition of Dalits and even Harijans are more vulnerable because আমি কওঁ অস্পৃশ্য এতিয়াও সেই অস্পৃশ্যতা তাহাঁতে অস্পৃশ্যতা in the sense they're untouchable. I told you, they are living in the outskirts of the villages. They are not allowed to access the public well. They are not allowed to access some designated, like some public shops. They have a designated shop from where they are supposed to buy things. Okay, but To a certain extent, we see that level has been elevated. It is all because of the education. সৰ্বশিক্ষা অভিযানে কিন্তু বহুখিনি চেঞ্জ কৰিলে. When you talk about that Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, so it has changed the whole scenario. Okay, how it has changed the whole scenario? We also see that education is something which is equated with the middle class. Now you see caste and caste conduits are different. Caste is about Varna system, right? Jati is different. Yesterday, in the last class, we have discussed about the Jati, right? Jati is more than the caste. Jati is about the region, about the geography, about the social control, about your birth, about your status. Okay, so about income, about education. So everything is equated to Jati. We call it our Jati. So Jati is not caste. So caste is all about that stratification of communities based on occupation. Stratification of communities based on occupation in order to plan society in a you say in a smooth way. The society will perform in a smoother way. That's why there is a classification of you see society based on occupation. That is what is caste. But whether it is relevant or not. So I may also say it is not that relevant, but you cannot erase it, because you might say also by talking about reservation you are making caste more relevant, but you cannot say that it's not relevant also. People might say because of globalization, market forces, there is no caste, and Mandal Commission has institutionalized class, not caste, but it has institutionalized both caste as well as class. Class, I have told you, class is different now. Class find itself according to Marxist understanding. In the last class I have told you, caste is also a group of people who find themselves into a historically determined system of production, who also own means of productions and also define their relationship with the mode of productions, and also find their role in the social organization of labor. So that is a kind of definition if we try to understand from Marxist perspective. So you see here a lot of aspects are associated. First, historically determined system of social production. So caste is class. He is only talking about class from economic perspective. Historically determined system of social production. So society, the way society determine the produce and productions, and who are the agent who will produce, and what they will produce. So and how they will produce, everything will come. So a group of people who find themselves in a historically determined system of production, how they find themselves through the relationship with the means of production. Now, what are the means of production? Like a land, labor. Land is basically the means of production. Suppose if you have land, so what you can do, you can have human productive forces. So that is your labor. So means of production and productive forces, that labor can also be executed in that. Like in a land, you can also attach your labor and you can make your land fertile. Right, you have land, so you can apply your labor. So that's what the human productive forces is associated with the means of production. So it is relation with the means of production. You might have factory, you might also have a technology, you might have labor, you might have software, and also the ownership of the means of production. So when you talk about your role with the mode of production, when you talk about mode of production and means of production, these are two different things. Mode of production will involve the asset, that is what the means of productions, and also the labor force, which is also the skill, unskill, your labor, what kind of physical force or your mental capabilities attached to the means of production. Okay, and the ownership. So when we talk about Marxist understanding of caste, here we have the means of production, we also have the mode of production. Means of production, you understand means of productions. Land is a means of production. Technology, you own a technology, that's a means of production, but you don't know how to operate. So in relationship with the means of production, you might own it, but you do not have the productive forces. But people who also own it, who also a skilled one to operate it, and at the same time, okay, that possess it, uh, can find themselves at a higher echelon, right? So, according to Marx, everything is related to means of production. A group of people who find themselves in a historically determined system of productions, and his or her relationship to the means of production, his role in the mode of production, and also social organization of labor. Social organization of labor, it is all about ownership. When there is an ownership, you will also determine who will recruit. Right, you have a means of production, you can recruit the labor. Right, so that's what historically determined system of the division of labor. So that's how Marx looked into the class. Sorry. So accordingly, so Marx said that class can be equated with the consciousness. When you talk about the class, it is all about the consciousness. Without consciousness, there cannot be a class. So that's why working class population have a different consciousness. They develop out of their, you might say, the productive forces, and out of their asset, whatever asset they have. Suppose actually they do not have any asset except the labor. They have only the asset, that is labor, to give. So they give the labor, and that is the asset to give, right? So you also see that that is the consciousness that will bind them. So they know, if they know that, yeah, we are here to sell the labor, and without our labor, there will be no productions. So then we get to find the kind of, you say, hartal, you say, revolutions. So it is all about the consciousness, how it turns to revolutions even. So Marx talks about the consciousness, kind of consciousness, and he also talks about a false consciousness. So in order to, make people work for us, we used to, and we, in the sense, the capitalist class, the dominant class, used to inject false consciousness huh, uh, among the have not section. So that was a Marx idea, and Marx has also defined freedom in a different way. They define class in a different way, and I find the Marx interpretation of class is very simplifying, just because he has categorized society into two communities, two classes: have and have not, position, non-position, patrician, plebeian, then feudal, then serf, right? Like that way. Then we capitalist and the workers, like that way. He has journeyman, guildman, like that way. Over the years, over the historically determined system of production, he said that there are classes, two classes. One is holding the asset, one is not holding the asset. And the classes which is holding the asset, who has the means of production, mode of production, own the mode of production, exploiting the non-owing class. That's what a simplest understanding of the idea of class according to Marx. But you see, then in academic circle, so we often criticize Marx. At times, Marx is also criticized. Okay, so because of the simplification, because of the utopian concept, right? So we have different divisions. In official classification, we have classes like, what kind of classes? We have general class is there. We have a general class. Then also we have OBC. Then we have SC and ST. This is the official classification of class. We not call it caste. This is an official classification of class here in India. So we have a general caste, like we have OBC, then we have SC, scheduled caste, and then we have scheduled tribe. So there are four kind of, stratification which are there according to official, you see, uh, comprehension of caste. Then, in a simpler way, we can also understand higher class, middle class, and lower class. So that's how we can understand, right? And we can also understand class from the point of view of income, from the point of view of wealth, from the point of view of education. Educated class, we call it educated class. We call it wealthy class, affluent class, right? Why we call them affluent caste? Because he's rich, he has wealth, but he has no education. There are also people who are wealthy, very rich, but do not have any education. So, educated class, it's a different kind of marker of the class. Educated, education, income, so salaried and non-salaried. There are also people, they hold large amount of land, so large land holdings they possess, so land owning class, but there is no salary. In that way, income is different for them. So income comes from the land. There is no education, but okay, they may also categorize themselves into wealthy section. So we can say there are some markers. Markers are there. Income is a marker, wealth is a marker, occupation is also a marker. If you say he is a doctor, or he is an engineer, you see he is a bureaucrat, he is an IS, okay, or even you see there are like that way. We also see now professor also put into that category. So people say that okay, they have money. So the by imagining the occupation, people put them into one particular class. So not necessarily that he or she might have that, you say that much of earning, or they might have also other problem, other niceties, other subjectivities to deal with. But yeah, it is all about a societal marker to identify the caste, societal marker to identify a caste. How will you look into it? Like the income, like the occupation, like the residence, where you are located. You know, uh, in South Africa, when there was apartheid, those who are Indian origin, or at that point of time they are Black American or Black African, those people are pushed to stay into a group areas. Land is also very barren, land is not fertile, okay, so that land constitute 10% of the total land area, whereas that 90% of fertile land area belong to 15% of white population, and that 85% of black population, they are inhabited into 10% of group area land. So you see the kind of discrimination. So it is not something very, like, ingrained in, like, western society. We talk about the race, here we talk about caste. Here we also have that racial uh, reflections. We talk about Astroasiatic, but our classification is different. We talk about Astroasiatic, like Tibeto-Burmese. We talk about the Indo-Aryan and also Dravidian. These are the four kind of races. That's how we can identify. But we don't talk much about it just because caste is already ingrained, right? So we have certain marker, social marker to identify the class. So these markers are different from Marxist identification of class, right? So it is important to understand, just because we discuss a lot about middle class, even middle class are being shown in the movies. When we talk about how caste is being shown in the movies, what are the problems which are shown in the movies even. So movies, it represent one kind of media text, right? That's a media text. How caste issues are highlighted in the newspaper articles, how caste issues are being even shown in a serial and a show, right? Day to day soap, everyday soap, how we get to find it, where you get to find it, how the narration and narratives are being built. So it's very important to identify that, and whether they have equated caste with the class or not, and what is class for us. You need to understand it. What is class for us then? And when you say caste, caste is also about the consciousness. It is about the purpose. I have told you in the last class, it is about the purpose. So, with class, we have to have a purpose attached to it. Means you are there to carry out some functions. That is the purpose. You carry out certain functions, and that determine the purpose of existence of one particular class. Huh. So it is attached to a purpose, it is attached to a function. So there is a functional definition of caste. You have understood? You say something. Princey, Sanjukta, you understood? Okay? Understood. So it is important to understand the caste, okay, and class. And when we talk about the middle class now, we have been discussing about the middle class. So who are the middle class in one particular class taken last month I might have discussed about middle class. So when you talk about the middle class in India, middle class people were actually created by Britishers. Huh. Unlike is Pakistan, you see that they do not have middle class. They have basically feudal class. In Pakistan, we get to find feudal class. In Western society also there is middle class, but in Indian society, our status, our treatment, our idea of middle class is completely different. How it is different, I'll tell you, because here nowadays will come from the Macaulay minutes. I'll get back to Macaulay minutes. Nowadays, when you talk about the middle class here in India, we can equate middle class with educations, with a home tutor, which they will be hired for their children. You will also find a middle class who will always rely on a domestic helper who will do their work. Okay, but in Western society, middle class will do everything themselves. Okay, so that maid is available only for the higher caste. For middle class, so they will do everything alone. Okay, but here we actually see there are urban middle, there are rural middle, there are upper middle, there are also lower upper middle. Like that way we can have divisions. Okay, and we can actually categorize middle class with the education, with their consciousness. Middle class consciousness is different. That was the question even asked to me during my interview in Hyderabad for MPhil. I got the MPhil, I didn't do. So what is your perception about middle class? One of my friend who is actually who's studious, and um, he, I would see, he is very wise and better wisdom, but he has provided the Marxist definition of class, because of which perhaps he was not taken. Later on, we have come across that. So, so when I was asked that middle class is basically we all are middle class. I simply said that we all are middle class. So middle class combines what in India nowadays, even the engineers, doctors, right from the very beginning, doctors, engineers, teachers, huh, they are all middle class. And when we talk about occupation, and also educated employees are also included into middle class. But uneducated employed are not included into middle class. Uneducated employees are included in the lower class. Okay. And also the postman, clerk, peons, they are included into lower caste in terms of occupation. I have told you, occupation is also a marker of caste, class. So occupation is also a marker of class. So in India, education is a marker of class. Educated, unemployed are also middle class, and this teachers, doctors, professors, lawyers are all middle class. Now you see that middle class in India created by Macaulay. Basically they wanted a class who will be English educated, they will be English in color and blood, but they will be Indian in blood and color, and English in opinion, English in English in intellectual capacity, intellect, English in opinion, and also in wisdom and views. So they wanted to create a class of interpreters who can interpret uh, their laws, their rules to the mass of the population. So British actually constitute that middle class here in India. And accordingly, you also see Raja Ram Mohan Rai at that point of time, belonged to that wealthy sections, but he himself also belonged to the upper middle class. I have told you he has houses. He had two houses. One is for Western people, one is to one is to accommodate Indian people. And everything is Western, in that Western, that premises, except Raja Ram Mohan Rai. Hmm. And that structure and everything is Indian in that premises, along with the Raja Ram Mohan Rai. So that was a kind of understanding that people have. So we see that middle class are those who will always question. That's how also we understand, because in urban India, middle class is equated to education, and in rural India, they are also equated to those who have acquired some land holdings. So we say that bonded labor and a caste and a Dalit class, they did not have any land holdings. Huh. So we also had a Bhudan movement, is a Bhumidan movement. Binoba Bhabe, that movement was carried out in 1951, Bhudan, in order to distribute the land equally. It is a request, it is a call to the landholders, huh, to allot the land to the poor peasant and to give them some subsistence, and through the non-violent means. They did not demand, they did not use any kind of violent method, resort to any kind of violent method to get the lands from the rich one, but they requested it and they carried out a movement, and in that way 80% of lands were reallocated and allotted to those needy one, in the society. So that happened in 1951 in Bhutan movement. Vinoba Bhave, who was also the disciple of Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, so we get to find this kind of instances are there. Hmm. But nowadays we won't see this kind of. So one person is holding the land. Hmm. And whenever name appears, then you actually see like cuisine spreading the propaganda and all. So that's a different issue altogether. So that's what is happening. So we also need to remember some of the practices, you know. So in rural area, caste is being looked into different way. There is a very strong caste alliances which formed even in rural India, because education is not the marker of caste and the class. Okay, in rural India, caste is more ingrained. In urban India, class is more ingrained. Okay, so hence those who have land holdings, once they also started producing for them, they started sending their children to urban India to get education. Those farmers, farmer community, agriculturalists, cultivators started sending the children to get education from urban India, from school and colleges located in India. So that also created these caste-free occupations, you know. Initially they had land holdings, they relied on the hand, and village were very self-sustained in that way, self-sustained economy, because they produce, there is no surplus to even sell, and even if they have surplus, they sell it. This cultivators and agriculturalists, farmers sell it, and they also distribute it among themselves. Although there are divisions, but still, to an extent, village happen to be self-sustained. Hmm. But we see that green, it happens because of green revolution also. In green revolution, we get to find many uh, like you know farmers which had land, they also started working on their land, and they started produce, and they also sell the surplus. In that way they is they started earning profit from them. So green revolution is also a marker of changing the whole caste class equation in the society. One is green revolution, and then we see the migration from rural to urban India is also a kind of transitory movement, and it is also marker of change, or it has influenced changing the caste class equation. And also reservation, the government policies. Government has institutionalized caste, but in a way you also see that when it has institutionalized caste, I have told you, many backward class, they were actually socially they were not backward, because they didn't get that kind of treatment. But you see, economically they are backward. As they were economically backward, they demanded that okay, you put us in that treatment, other backward status, or give us SC community. We need reservation. We need the benefits of the reservation. So they understand it. And the educated one, they actually try to uh, think about, try to defend their rights, try to bring them up. And that's why educated one from the communities. That's what they did it. So in that way, reservation also changed the caste equations to an extent. Okay, so that's what you need to understand. And we also see representation now. This is what is the sociological understanding of caste and class. And when we talk about the representational issue, then you need to find out some of the texts. Like one is Muknayak, that is like the first text that is trying to give justice to one particular community. No, that is put at at a low level in the hierarchy, right? So, and then we also have, um, you see some of the films, you can say Masan is there, huh? And we have like Parajneech film, and some of the directors came up and they themselves, they have experienced that kind of discrimination, and out of the discriminations they create the narrative just because they have faced the discriminations, and they made films and they have executed that project. Even the first film in India, 1918, which was made by Dada Falke, there's a Falke, huh, on his name we also have an award, right? So he made a film on Varnashram Dharma. So Sri Krishna, I forgot, Sri Krishna Ram. You see, find out 1918. There is a Sri Krishna Dharma, Sri Krishna Dharma. That's a movie. So that's so deep that Savarnas forecast and how they offer prayer to God. Different way they offer prayer to God. Okay, so over the years, things are changed, but again, the narrative which is created around Dalit is always different. We talk about tribal that is a different entity altogether. If we have to discuss about Sixidal, we discuss about the rights, huh? Because we have to discuss about the forest right of the tribal. Okay, so ethnicity is much more attached to that tribal community. So that's a different aspect altogether. But here, when you talk about the caste, you also see that the way narratives are built, uh, put a Dalit and a SC as a oppressed one. So you won't find any kind of news, even if there is violence or atrocities committed by upper caste to a lower caste, then you do not have an account from the upper caste. You will have only account from the lower caste, and it is also highlighted that Dalit has been raped, or some brutal action has been committed against that Dalit, like that way it is being highlighted, right? So in that way, you see that there is a kind of romanticization of even the atrocities which is being committed, because they are always put romanticized. The struggle is always there. People talk about the struggle. Oh, I understand the kind of struggle that you have been facing. They romanticize it, but you are not contributing to overcome it even. Can you even speak for that community? Can you speak for that person who is struggling to adjust into the societal norms, struggling to adjust into this societal decorum, or also even a lot of nitty gritties which are there? Huh. So this is a general statement, but you see, there are people. They often give you some blunt remarks that, yeah, I could see you're struggling. Even yesterday, I must say, I acknowledge that what you have done, nobody could have done. But again, you are romanticizing. First, you see that you contribute. You also see, you understand the problem, actual problem. Then you say. But for sake of courtesy, also people love romanticizing things. That's what they're romanticizing the struggle of the caste. But this is not the way. You are not supposed to romanticize. You're supposed to work on it. You're supposed to be vocal about it at different front. You cannot simply say that I was also the one, being a Brahmin, I was also one who has been discriminated, who faced discrimination because of reservation, and then you are speaking for reservation. No, if you are speaking for reservation, then you you cannot even say, you cannot bring in a contradiction that you have faced discrimination and thereafter also you are speaking for reservation. Why? So I have seen there are people, they will say, I face discrimination. There are people from Brahmin community, they'll say that I face discrimination, I face lot of discrimination. It is lack of maturity basically, they do not understand. So I face lot of discrimination because of reservation. ना, तुम्हारा एज ही कितना हुआ है discriminate face करने के लिए? And you were in a belt which is like far from the central hinterland, and it's much more, you see, equal compared to central India, what has happened in central India. So you haven't faced that discrimination. You think that you are, just because you have got lands to look at. So you also try to change your lens. You see the kind of atrocities people are also facing, discrimination people are facing, and there is no capital. Main problem is that caste doesn't have any capital, So social capital is not. One is that wealth is not there. We also had a Bahujan Samaj Party that came in after the Green Revolution. You get to see when people started earning some land holdings, and they started to that cultivating on that land, and there were middle class among the Dalits, and they started taking collective action. They mobilized themselves and started taking collective actions. Started taking collective actions against the Savarna communities. They started demanding that it is not about the material affluence that we want. Apart from education, apart from job, we also need social standing. We are also fighting against social humiliation. We are fighting for social justice, he said. So वोट हमारा, राज तुम्हारा नहीं चलेगा, ये था ना वो बहुजन समाज पार्टी का. एंड मायावती also worked a lot in Uttar Pradesh. So that came out of that consciousness, caste consciousness. So you also need to understand the caste consciousness when Dalit caste elevated themselves to middle class. They uh, took out the collective action. They carried out the collective action, and they mobilized themselves. They formed caste alliances. Now also in many areas, in many states, you get to find caste-based vote block. There's an N block. They usually vote on the basis of caste. In Karnataka, Vakkalika and Lingayats, they usually vote together. And that is what there are also Naidu community in Tamil Nadu. That is a Naidu community will vote a Naidu person only. That like that way. So we have some preferences, caste-based preferences, not some, more caste-based preferences in terms of voting. And that's what we can talk about. That's where we see the reflection of politicization of caste. In politicization of caste, we also need to understand not only about the Sanskritization, the effort of Sanskritization or westernization. So each and every aspect of Sanskritization and westernization is not wrong, let me tell you. I'm not making you anti-Sanskritization or anti-westernization, no. We need to get the good of everything, virtue of everything. Sanskritization has created a role model of Brahmin among you, and you see that you need to follow the lifestyle customs of the Brahmin. But at the same time, so it has made the representation of the caste, their own customs, their lifestyle. We also need to know their lifestyle. What's problem knowing their lifestyle? It has made them invisibilized. Sanskritization has made the caste-based customs, caste-based rituals, their lifestyle invisibilized, and also at times making them exotic, surveys and all. So that is to be, you see, that is to be abolished. That is not to be adored. So what is to adore? You adore the upward mobility. You adore it. I'm not saying that you adore you get an occupation which is not related to your traditional occupation, and you also advocate for caste-free occupation. And it is also, you see that in Delhi metropolitan city, there are many Brahmins. They are now selling leader. Now you see they coming out of the traditional occupation. This is a change in terms of like caste based occupation. There's a caste free occupation when Brahmin are selling leather goods. The Brahmin will not sell leather goods. Now they are selling leather goods. हाँ, सो ऐसा होता है तो कोली लोग सेल कर सकते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है. So now we are thinking that we can end reservation that when people from Bhangi community become Sankaracharya. Okay, if you can allow marriage like intercaste marriages, if you allow people from Bhangi Koli community become Sankaracharya, there will not be any reservation because it is more about social humiliation. 3,000 years of humiliation, which Ambedkar has mentioned. Right? That is important. And that's why it is important to intensify certain issues. It's not about that it's no longer relevant. I can say it's no longer relevant. Yes, it is. Yet it is relevant. Hence, so you try to read. I will give some materials. You also read. So I thought about discussing equality. Equality concept is there. You might have understood. When we talk about political equality, it is all about right to participate equally in choosing the government, equal representation in the legislature. So whether caste that scheduled caste has representation in the legislature, how vocal they are about caste-based issues. Okay, and also tribal communities, they do also have representation in the legislature, vocal about the tribal issues. So we actually see their representation in the legislature. So when we talk about the political equality, the right to choose the government, yeah, the right to participate in the politics, they can form alliances, they can form association, right to form association. There are also like tendencies in Andhra Pradesh, Kamas, Reddis, they don't allow low caste and Sudra community to form association. Even if they form association, financial capital is the issue. They do not have money even to run the association. In higher caste, they do have money. They run the association. They also form caste alliances. They recruit even the political party. They even give money to political party, and they put a candidate to contest the elections. For even Dalit and even lowly caste, they do not have that much of money to run an association. Even if they have an association, we need money nowadays. How to get the money? And that's why association alliance with the higher caste is important. And now it is about morality also. Now you see, when we bring in all together, now when you are educated, it is more about the morality. It's all about morality. But people, because we also advocate morality nowadays, we don't see anything else. We only advocate morality nowadays because there is a lack of morality. Even the educated people, even we so-called intellectuals, do not have the morality. They cannot see themselves out of that caste, class, ethnicity dimension, out of the privilege dimension, out of that communitarian dimension. Okay, you have your roots in the community, but you see what is good, what is common good. You have to think for your community, but you see how your stand can be egalitarian. It's very important. So, okay, I'll have to continue again, because we are supposed to have 2, 3 things. Because it's 11 o'clock. You do not have a class?